Hello, once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our virtual classroom. Today, we're going to have a bit of an introductory lesson again, as we're still talking about statistics and the like. But what I really want to focus on today is here in lesson 27-2, which you can find on OneNote. 27-2, really just number one. That's really all I want to focus on in this lesson. And here we're talking about variables. And yes, variables like the variables that we have seen already in this class, variables. And now when we think about variables, based on what we've seen in this class so far, you might think of a letter or a symbol that we use to represent an unknown quantity, like the variable for X, or we can have Y, or maybe if I were to ask you or the class, at a carnival, how many rides would you go into? That would depend on the person, right? Because that's going to change from person to person. So really a variable is the value of a variable, the number of a variable is going to depend on the situation or the person or whatever, right? So that's why we use a letter, because that might be different from person to person. For me, R might simply be 3 for 3 rides. For you, it might be 10 or 20, depending on how many rides you go on, right? So again, that's why we use letters or symbols to depict variables, right? But really a variable is anything, ladies and gentlemen, anything that can change from person to person, all right? A variable is anything that can vary from person to person, all right? So for example, in the survey that we took yesterday, which here's an example of that survey, the answers on this survey are going to be different for the most part from person to person, or they can be different from person to person. For example, height, I measure 67 inches, right? So if you were to measure me, you would measure 67 inches, which is 5 feet 7 inches or so. And yes, is it possible that somebody else in a classroom is going to measure the same as me? Yes. But again, that is something that can be different from person to person, just like the number of people within somebody's home or the number of minutes it takes somebody to get ready, etc. So those are different variables, things that can change or vary from person to person. That's what we call it variable, because it can vary. So now in this survey, these are different variables, and there's two different types of variables, okay? Two different types of variables. There are categorical variables and numerical variables, categorical and numerical variables, all right? And so let's look at numerical variables. And if you look at numerical, we see that it almost seems to say number, numerical, number. And that is because a numerical variable, ladies and gentlemen, is a variable where the number makes a difference. Think of things that we measure, things that we count, things that we weigh, where the number makes a difference. For example, height. All right, I measure 67 inches, very good. Let's say that somebody measures 68 inches, so slightly taller. Is 68 larger than 67? Yes, right? That is indicating that that individual is taller than me, just like 67 is more than 60, right? Obviously, that is indicating that I am taller than that individual. The number actually makes a difference. It is a numerical variable because the number is measurable and it makes a difference. 67 really is more. 67 inches is more than 60 inches, right? In the same way, think of temperature. Is there a difference between -1 degrees and 50 degrees? Yes, one is much colder than the other. The number that we use for degrees makes a huge difference. Think of age. Is there a difference between being 20 years old and being 19 years old? Yes. Think of time. Is taking 20 minutes to get there different than 10 minutes to get there? Yes, the numbers make a difference. So again, anything that is measurable, countable, is having 3 dogs more than 2 dogs? Yes, 3 is more than 2. Then that means it is a numerical variable. With that in mind, let's look at the first variable, gender. Gender, is that a numerical variable? Can you actually take a ruler and measure something and be like, oh, that is a boy for sure? No, you cannot. You can't take a thermometer, stick it in somebody and be like, oh, a girl. No, you don't measure gender. Gender is a label, or gender can be thought of as an observable quality. So gender would actually fall into categorical. So I would put a C. It is not numerical. You don't measure gender. You don't count gender. So it is categorical, right? Same thing with eye color. Eye color, you don't take a ruler and measure somebody's eye and be like, oh, that is definitely blue, right? You don't stick a thermometer in somebody's eyes and be like, that measures blue degrees. No, eye color is going to be categorical. It is simply an observable quality or a label that I'm giving to that quality, right? So that is eye color. That is going to be categorical. Height, as we just discussed, you measure height with numbers, and the numbers actually mean something. 30 is more than 20, for example. So that is going to be numerical. Number of people in your household, again, that is numerical, not because it says number, no, but because the number of people actually makes a difference. 4 people is more than 3. 10 people is more than 2, right? That actually means something. 10 really is more than 3. All right, you're going to find in a second that numbers don't always mean numerical. Okay, for example, the number of birth months. For example, right now we're in the month of March, so that is 3, right? January would be 1. December would be 12, right? So ask yourself, what the number of the birth month, would that be a numerical variable or a categorical variable? Well, just by looking at it, a lot of you guys are going to think numerical. Look, Mr. Dugal, those numbers, that makes it numerical. Well, not really. Think about it. Why do we name January 1? Why do we put 3 for March? Why do we put 12 for December? Is December 12 times bigger than January? Is that why we put it 12? Are there more days in March than in January? Is December 12 because it's the largest or the longest month? No. Now I understand that it is the last month, but really, says who? Why don't we start with April? Right? Why don't we label April 1 and then we label March all the way around and go back to March 12? Why do we even count months like that? As you can see, the number doesn't really mean anything. It's just a label that we put on those months. We just decided January was 1, February was 2, March is 3, etc. So the birth month, even though it has numbers, it is actually categorical. So I'm going to put a C for birth month. So in Schoology, for 1, we put C, 2, C, 3N, 4N, 5C. And finally, for number of pets, that would also be numerical, because again, 1 cat is different than 4 cats. 4 is more than 1. 4 actually means something. It is countable, right? That is a measurable difference. Very, very good. So try the next ones. Superpower. That is that categorical or numerical? The only other one that I will give you is room number, ladies and gentlemen. Because, for example, this room here in my classroom is room 108. But even though that is a number, does that number actually mean anything? Is room 108 bigger than room 106? Is room 216 twice as big as room 108? Does that actually mean anything? And we can see, ladies and gentlemen, that we could have named this room anything. It could have been, if we started counting from the other side of the building, this could have been room 136, right? Who's to say? Why are we even using numbers? We could use letters. We could use animals. This could have been the cheetah room or the T-Rex room or whatever, the orca room, right? It's just a label. Now, there is a reason why they labeled it that way, but the number doesn't actually say anything about the room itself. So this one will be categorical. But you go ahead and try number 7, number 9, 10, 11, and 12 to say well, categorical and numerical. And that's really all I want to cover in this video, keeping it nice and short. And hopefully, and that's enough for you to actually do your assignment on Schoology anyways. All right, so with that in mind, I will see you next time, ladies and gentlemen.